Google has threatened to pull out of Australia over the new link tax laws. Luke, do you want to run us through this one? I've been talking a lot. I'm sorry.
All right. Big tech firms have been facing increased calls for regulations as profits soar, and Australia is looking to be the first to step up to the plate. We've been talking about this type of stuff for a long time now, but it's been kind of hit or miss in how it's going to be implemented. And I think one of the big reasons for that is because of the massive variance in terms of companies that operate on the internet. There's your Googles, there's your Facebooks, but then there's also your, your float planes and your other stuff.
There can only be one float plane.
Yes. Australia's link tax law would make Google, Facebook, and other companies pay media outlets for linking to their news content. Very interesting. Google and others in the industry have said the law would be unworkable and leave them with no other choice but to leave the country. Australian lawmakers respond by accusing Google of blackmail with PM... I didn't actually see that coming, with Prime Minister Scott Morrison saying they would not yield to threats. Wow. Interesting. I guess leaving the country is a threat.
I mean, kinda.
Is PIA a sponsor of this stream?
I don't know. Does it matter?
Well, they are now. You can, if this becomes a thing and Google pulls out, you could use PIA and still use Google.
Yeah.
Australian newspaper revenues have been dropping steadily since the late 2000s. That you could probably, I would assume, put any country at the beginning of that sentence, and it would probably be true. Australia sees financial support for its news industry as vital to democracy.
That's
if the law passes,
fair point.
Probably in a lot of ways, yeah.
Yep.
Because the more news outlets go under, the more it's going to simmer down to less sources of information, if that makes sense. You're going to have less potential views on a topic, which is not good. You want more reviewers, whether it's news articles or
more perspectives is healthy.
Yes. According to lawmakers, news accounts for 1/8 of Google searches in Australia. While Australia isn't Google's largest market by a pretty massive amount, I would say, Google is fearful for what precedent this might set. And that's pretty legit, because I'm sure other countries are going to look at how effective this ends up being or doesn't end up being, especially places like the EU, which are very...
pretty regulation happy.
Pretty regulation happy and pretty on the forefront of digital regulation, I would say. Which a lot of countries are still not necessarily stepping in on. Last week, Google piloted a program blocking news sites from search results for 1% of Australians to test the value of Australian news services. Ugh.
Ouch. Dang.
Yeah. What a way to put it.
That's savage.
Both Google and Facebook argue that news organizations get the benefit of their platforms driving readers to their websites. They report that the comparative revenue is tiny. Google says just 7.7 million out of 3.7 billion total in Australia over 2019. Geez. James has a take on this. He says this will only lead to information siloing, where Facebook will introduce a search engine to search for news uploaded to Facebook, evading the tax, similar to how people search on Amazon instead of shopping the web more broadly. Yikes, that actually makes sense. A lot of it's speculative. We'll see if it actually happens. And if it does happen, we'll see if Google actually pulls out. And if Google actually pulls out, we'll see how well that goes.
See how pregnant Australia ends up being.
Yeah.
Will Google pay child support? I don't know.
I suspect not.